Hello and welcome back to Heart to Heart with me, Shakti Sundari. I'm here in the heart of super trendy Camden, London, with Kenny Mammarella-D'Cruz, who is known as the Man Whisperer. So welcome to you, Kenny.
Thank you. I'm super chuffed to be here with you. And I can't wait to hang out. I've seen your other videos and I just love the way you relate with people. So, lucky me.
Thank you. So in these meetings with our guests, I often start because I love hearing about their personal stories as much as what you do in the world today. And of course, your personal story always informs what you're bringing, the gifts that you're bringing to the world today. So tell us a little bit about your background. I'd love to hear how you got to this place.
Well, let's see where to start. I guess there's the logical story and there's the emotional story. And the logical story is I was a nice Catholic boy, born in Uganda. So my family's from Goa, hence the Catholicism in my name from Portugal. And we had a really blissful life over there. We had great community, obviously beautiful weather, tasty fruit, even tastier than Waitrose. And life was sweet. Life was really great. And then trouble hit with the whole Amin thing. And we kind of heard that something might happen, so I would have been 7, 8, but I was a very aware child for various reasons. I was just an aware child and I kind of knew what was going on. Before we know it, my grandparents moved back to Goa, not realizing that not only did Goa not quite exist anymore because it was taken over by India, but neither did their home. Property went and things were very different, so there wasn't a home for us to go back to Goa. And then before I knew it, we were on the death list. My father was helping people to get out of the country that were on the death list.
Can I just ask what the death list is?
The Secret Service put him on the list of people who need to disappear. Over and above the death list, in those days, if there were 3 people talking in the streets, that was conspiracy against the government, so you'd be locked up or beaten up or whatever. If there was anything going on in the streets, whether it was beatings or shootings, and anyone looked, then the same situation, you'd be taken away. So it was, and there were curfews. It was a very, very, very dangerous time.
My history's not great, so you're basically living under a military regime.
Yeah.
And the context for your family being there initially, was that your father's profession or what had taken you there in the first place?
Both parents were born in Africa. My mother was born in Uganda. My father was born in Kenya. My father looked like Casey Jones. He used to drive steam engines from Kenya to Uganda, and he's got so many adventures they both have hunting and just being in Africa and having this life. So my grandparents moved there. I guess it was mainly for work, really.
You had quite a rooting there.
Oh, totally. It was home.
Yeah, it was home.
And we are from a bubble that no longer exists. So in Goa, we're foreign because we are from Africa or from the West or whatever. People, when we got on the death list, we were followed and our phones were tapped. We had to go into hiding after a phone call saying they're going to come and kill us that night, etc.
How old were you at this point?
I was 7, 8.
Right.
Yeah. But with that, we were disconnected from our community because I guess it would be dangerous. Well, it would be, there's the whole conspiracy thing. If we were together, then who knows what we were cooking up. But it would be dangerous for them to be in contact with us. So
you were isolated.
Exactly, totally isolated. We didn't know where anyone went, and people pretty much had to run for their lives. And for a long time, we were in denial. It's like, surely this will pass. And my parents, grandparents, etc., we used to try tribal troubles. That would often pass, but this wasn't passing. So Yeah, we ran for our lives, and for years the greetings that my parents and their friends that they were brought up with, it wouldn't be, "Oh my God, it's so great to see you." It was more like, "You're alive. How did you get out?" Which was weird. So after, well, we left my father in Uganda, and we didn't know whether he'd survive.
So where did you head off to?
We flew over here. We had British
UK.
passports, yeah. So we were on my mother's passport. We got out. We were in refugee camp. We were pretty much the only goans in refugee camp. Everyone else was from India, so they had their language and their traditions and their religion, and we were kind of isolated, pretty isolated there too. And from, I think it was 9 months later, my father came to the UK, and he was quite a different man. He'd really, really been through it. It's only recently that I've been able to feel it all. Partly because my mother's written a book. And she wrote it for my brother and I. And so many fantasies now make sense. And it's in revisiting the emotional part of the story that we've been able to set ourselves free. And I guess that's the essence of my work, it's the emotional story. Feel it, follow the feeling, and what needs to be accepted and felt and included and taken along, rather than suppressed and bricked over and survived. So work is from survival into living. And when I started feeling and grieving and allowing, I'm so much more alive. I'm so much more available. I can take part in life with as a man, with an open heart and a calm mind, without fear of abandonment or humiliation. Because if I'm living in survival of that, there's no space for my life. So it's really from the survival into the living, and from the doing into the being. So within the men's groups, with my private work, I have a few very, very simple techniques.
Can I just stop you a minute there? 'Cause
Sure.
you've leapt into a place I want to go.
But not quite yet.
Definitely want to go there because that's what you're about. But just pausing for a moment with this story, which is so heartfelt, so moving, and well, two things. So first of all, you have shown your true self. You have shown your vulnerability. You've shown your emotion. As a man, I know that's a huge thing, and then you've kind of gone into how that's so essential for the work that you now do with men. So I guess the next step question before we get there is, how did you go then from where you were to realizing that you wanted to do this work that you do now with men, holding space in groups and one-to-ones? What was the sort of path towards offering that?
We went, my father ran refugee camps in Italy. He was a handy bloke, and he got on very well with people. And he managed to get all the different, I don't wish to be rude, the different flavours or tribes or types of Indians together, because everyone needed to cooperate and deal with what was going on. And then when he came to the UK, he helped to run a refugee camp here. Yeah. And we heard about a small community in Wales that was Welsh. It was the crossing to Ireland, so it was Irish, it was Italian, it was Catholic, it was what we were used to, and it was small and safe. So we moved to Fishguard, and I had a very good childhood. But again, we were surviving. And I developed all sorts of mental health issues or emotional health issues. I don't really know what you'd call them. I used to twitch and grunt. I had Tourette's. I used to pick at myself. My fingers, pull my hair. I had obsessive compulsive disorder, obviously post-traumatic stress disorder. I had the whole family of things, eating disorders, etc., etc. And it was all part of survival. So I guess in a way, this was the overflow as I held things together and the family survived. And in a way, they were my dirty little secret, because most of these things, no one can miss the twitching and grunting, but most people didn't know what was going on, and I was just surviving and trying to be normal. A lot of the people weren't used to coloured people. They hadn't, coloured's just not a politically correct word anymore. What am I these days? People of colour. It's difficult to remember.
Did anyone try to diagnose you or make you better, or take you to a doctor or a therapist or any of that stuff?
I don't think it existed that much in those days. It was working class Wales. We were in a street we were in council houses, and the people were wonderful, and we were accepted, and we were normal. We were part of. We couldn't really ask for more. Refugee camps weren't great. We belonged, we were safe, and we were starting from scratch. We were learning to cook, learning to clean. I remember my mother the next door neighbours showed her how to peel a potato, and the first time she did it, she took it next door to check whether she did it okay. It was really starting from scratch. In order to turn into my own man, because I was used to being a little boy pretending to be a man. I was used to being, in a way, enmeshed with my mother, taking care of things. So there was the whole Oedipal thing going on. I needed to be my own man rather than a man that other people liked and rated and respected, because, it needed to begin and end with me. So I realised I needed to sit with things. I needed to sit with my shadows. I needed to get into my emotions. There were a lot of things that I needed to somehow unlearn. I didn't know what I was doing, but I needed to somehow set myself free and become, I guess, my own self-respecting man in alignment with who I am, and start again from my foundation, in alignment with myself, in relationship to the world, rather than a jolly good blag that does the tricks and survives very well. It's just, I couldn't do it. It didn't leave space for me. And I guess I've had a Catholic life. I've also had a very spiritual life. I've also had a theosophical life in a way, because for me it was the study of the essence of the religions and nature and science and the shadow and everything else. So I studied a lot. I needed to live it. So I explored. I've travelled and lived in various countries, and I didn't realise that at some level I was looking for a home. I was looking to be invisible and normal. It's the inner journey that really allowed me to find my so-called wounds, to find where I was stuck, to find what I needed to know and what I needed to let go of.
So looking at you now, of course, people are going to be thinking, well, he's not twitching and grunting, he's not cooking himself.
I've done quite well, eh?
Yeah, it seems like this amazing, it's a very put together, present, real, authentic man.
Thank you.
So that's amazing. So what has happened? Like you said you did this inner work. I'm sure there's been so much, and I know that from my own journey, it's an ongoing thing, and there's always more. But are there particular trainings, courses, workshops, teachers that you found most supportive for you in that journey?
I can't really say there are. I've read a lot, I've done workshops and things and whatever. I I had to unlearn. I didn't know. I had to unlearn. I needed to find little techniques that in the moment I could turn things around. I needed to find a voice that I could communicate without being an authority or a victim or in any way put on an act or a good show. So, I mean, there are all sorts of things, like I got through various coincidences to know a guy I don't think is known at all, he's dead now, called Mike Portelli. And it's through him that I found A Course in Miracles, which was a lot more mainstream and usable than Blavatsky and Theosophy, for example. And I guess that was quite emotional work, following the feeling and finding where the depressed pause button was. But with a lot of things, it's like, no, I need this to be really simple and to be turned around in the breath. So I learned, and I used to be addicted to survival and what was going on in my head. And I'd believe all of that rubbish. But that kept me second guessing, in control and not present. And I needed to be present and connected and able to respond to what life brings rather than react. So one very simple thing that I do and that I pass on is, as soon as I find myself in my head trying to work something out, I stop. I don't even think to the end of the sentence anymore, and I take a deep breath in. And as I breathe in, I think, thank you for reminding me who I used to be. So used to be is in the past. And I used to be that thinker, that controller, that second guesser, that person that needed everyone to love and approve of me and know that I'm surviving, and I guess, positioned myself. So as I breathe out, I'm no longer thinking those things, and there's space for me to exist in the present. And then I engage and take part with what's in front of me. Like, how simple is that? It saved my life. And I pass it on. And it takes a lot of practice in the beginning. And I remember to do it. The most difficult time is when I'm in fear. And this is how I adjust to coming back to love. It's not always easy. Sometimes it seems like a really silly option. But hey.
What I love as you're talking is that you've mentioned, spiritual concepts, theosophy. Is that right?
Theosophy.
Theosophy.
Yeah. And
meditation and emotion and feeling and wounding. And these are all things that I can imagine might turn off a traditional man. Or a very mainstream person, and yet you're delivering it in a way where it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And you're embodying it in a way that is obviously doing something because you're embodying it.
Yeah. Well, the strange thing is, I would say that I was quite a feminine boy. I was responsible for emotions, mine and well, not so much mine, I'm not sure I even existed that much, but everyone else's. It was holding it together and surviving. And with all the second guessing and with all the enmeshment, etc., etc. And I needed to be, as I wanted to turn into my authentic man, somehow I unlearnt the surviving boy, and a more masculine bloke seemed to show up. And I love my feminine side, and the masculine side has showed up, and it's so me as well. But it's not I will be one or the other, but what's the truth in this moment? And I feel I'm now man enough in the moment to be as masculine or feminine or childish or adult or sad or angry or elated or whatever as the truth is. And as I became more masculine, in a very, very short space of time, a matter of 2 or 3 months, I went from probably 70% female clients to 90% male clients, because something in me changed. And something that I put out changed, and I attracted blokes. I attracted from builder types and fighters and, the more masculine so-called men, to feminine men that have had similar issues to the ones that I've had. I attracted isolated blokes and popular blokes and gay blokes and poor blokes and rich blokes and God knows all sorts of blokes. And what everyone has in common is they want to be who they are, be the best in their lives and contribute to their communities, whether it's their children or their families or wherever they are. They just want to be true. They want space to exist very often. And that's the journey that I took. And I have a very, very strange, I have lots of fantasies, and I also have an inner DJ that gives me so many clues about what's really going on. But one of my fantasies is that I chose to do the work that I do. And I chose also to learn things this lifetime, to contribute, to unlearn things, to complete with people that I might have known in the past. So if I choose these things before coming down, then, and I come down without remembering these things, because if I bring all my awareness to this lifetime experience, then some of my awareness will cut out some of the other awareness and I wouldn't have the experience. So if I come down and I don't remember, then I kind of believe that maybe I agreed to the things that happened to me. So as these things happen and need to be unlearned, and this is so how it works with my clients, in finding the places where the pause button's down or there's a wound or a drama or whatever.
Can I ask you about that, the phrase that you're using there, the pause button down? Explain that.
It's so it's where rather than being free to be, there might be something stopping me, stopping my expression as a person. There might be a depression, a depressed pause button. There might be some sort of an avoidance. So if something happened, then I'd stop it, I'd brick over it, and I'd survive it. But it's still there. It would cause a limitation. So the way that I find mine and other people's is they will come up in life. There'll be a pattern maybe in their script, in their life. Or emotionally, they might just stop there. That's the place that if they follow their feeling, it's like the scene of the crime, so to speak. That's where the pause button's down. And it's owning that part. It might be feeling it, accepting it, and taking it along in life, but not avoiding it and therefore feeding it. So for me, rather than the logical stories, it's emotionally what's coming up. And as I want more from life, then I will find a place that needs to be released or embraced to allow that to be free and allow me to be freer to have more from life. That's my little game anyway, and it seems to work so far.
I love it.
I made, coming from, I guess, strangely, a working class Welsh family, there wasn't a lot of funds. Therapy was for Hollywood stars or something like that. I was brought up in a very different world to the world that I now operate in. So I worked it out myself. And it's made it so easy for me to pass it on. And I don't think I really had the mind to understand that much and to hold principles. I mean, the thing that I'm still left with is dyscalculia, which is to do with numbers and time and distance and weights, things in sequence. So using computers, you read this, you click that. It does my head in. And I think it's the same with holding concepts and holding things in my mind is I don't have the capacity. It needs to be very simple in my language, and luckily it's easy to pass on. So it's very bloke now, where when I was more of a feminine mind, I could hold so many things in my head and I'd know how everyone is and what's going on everywhere. But now it's what's in front of me, and this is where I'm present. So there are costs, there are huge costs. Lots more testosterone, lots less attention span.
So I've got to ask you about your work. You've mentioned different aspects of it already. Sounds incredible and very powerful. You run groups for men, you work one-to-one. So I'm curious to know, who comes to you and what do they present with? What are they seeking support for? And what are the typical questions, issues, challenges that are confronting men? Because most of your clients are men now. So, yeah.
It started very selfishly. After being away from the UK for almost 5 years, I lived in Sydney for a couple of years and I travelled here and there and did all sorts of things. I came back to London and my friends couldn't meet me at a depth that I needed. They got into work, power, career, drink, drugs, love addiction, sex addiction, whatever, and it's like, I need to be met. That's all fine. I'll come raving as well or whatever, but I need to be met at a depth. So that was about 15 years ago when my first men's group started, and I called my nearest and dearest into my lounge and I said to them, there must have been about 12 or 18, I need to be met here. Otherwise, you might be chucked. And it was kind of really as simple as that. And 2 or 3 of them still come. A lot of them have moved away. But that's where it started. And it was my need to be met at depth. It was my need to be real, to be challenged, and to grow with the people that I love. I didn't want to not move on. And I wanted them to move on with me. So from there, people heard about the groups that I started running, and we'd basically hang out and ask questions and share experiences and grow, laugh a lot, explore things, learn from each other. And people just got to know and got to know. Now I probably run, 8 or 10 groups a month, 4 closed groups, online groups, which now works, people in other countries as well as here, live groups in London and various other places, and I'm starting to pass them on, train people to run groups so they can take them into their own communities.
So what sort of titles do the groups have? So, what is it that people come expecting or looking for?
A lot of people come because there's an issue, and it could be that they're stuck in themselves somewhere and they realize they have the same relationship scripts, or they can't attract a partner who can meet them, or they can't attract a partner at all, or they have betrayal issues or health issues, or they don't know how to be their own man or a father, or it could be, a very basic real career thing or a basic life thing. And then after a while they realize that the outside's not going to change, but they can change. And as they change, then life might treat them differently. So I would say it's generally 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s more than anything. And it's not about the age that they're at, it's the stage that they're at. Yeah. And it's not like there's often anything really wrong with them or bad going on. There can be an issue, but it's more that they want more out of life. They want to exist in their life. They want to experience more, love more, have more passion, have more purpose, have more personal power, be able to communicate. They realize that there's more and they don't know how to get it. A lot of them are or have been in therapy. A lot of them might have done personal development things. There are books like No More Mr. Nice Guy, or what's that one? David Dada, The Way of the Superior Man, Stephen Biddulph's Manhood. A lot of these books talk about join a men's group. So they Google, they join a men's group, they come and check it out. So suddenly, when I started it, it's like, what's a men's group, and are you all gay, and do you do strange things together? Yeah. We sit in a circle. There's often a tea light candle, this is London, in the middle. Sometimes there's a fire, we go camping and stuff. Yeah. There are basic ground rules. We have 2 minutes silence before we start, just to get present and to breathe, and to kind of not bring the frenzy of the day with us. Some people aren't into silence or closing their eyes, so they just check everyone out and think, what am I doing here? And then there's a check-in round, which is just basic day-to-day stuff, as well as what they want from the group and how they feel, and the basic stuff that people might wonder about each other. So that's out of the way. And during that, I get to hear what's in the room, and rather than quick, let's therapy this person or save this person, it's everyone talking about when what their relationship is with that, and when they felt that, and how they've succeeded with this or how they've had problems with this, so we all get to learn from each other. But it's the stage that everyone's at and the stuff that we can share together. So my intention is just to hold a space where we can be together and grow. It's not that people need to stay forever. Some people pick up their tools, they gain what they need to gain, and they move on. Some people stay for a long, long time because they love the community and it's great fun.
Wow, it's just amazing to hear that you're doing this amazing work. I wonder if there's ever been, I mean, you did mention a little bit, a stigma for people to acknowledge that they're coming. Do they tell their wives, their girlfriends about this, or is it something that's a bit secret? And also, you know, what's the power of gathering as men? I mean, I know a lot of women gather together. So what's the power for a man of just being in a group of men?
The strange thing about the groups is a lot of the men, some of them don't tell other people because people might think it's some strange cult thing, or what do you do, and it's got to be something dodgy. So they might not tell people. Other people proudly tell people. Other people will tell people who they think might benefit from it.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter. But the strange thing about the groups is people, especially in the closed groups, or the people they get to know, will say, the people here know me better than the people in my family or the people I was brought up with, because I can be me and no one wants me to be a certain way or suppress anything. There's space for me to get to know myself, express myself, and really be met. So people just find themselves and they find a way to express. They find a language that's not colluding or justifying. So one of the ground rules is using I statements, and it's a lot more powerful to say, I feel scared when so-and-so happens, rather than, you know, when so-and-so happens and you feel scared, well, actually, that might not happen for other people. Other people may not feel scared, and it may limit a way of getting over that fear and claiming that power. So there are very basic ground rules to be with presence, about now, rather than always. That might be used to, which makes space for now. Obviously, things like confidentiality. And the final rule is playing big enough to be challenged, rather than how do I, and this is very, very often the case with men, who do I need to be and how do I need to act so I'm not humiliated or abandoned or told off or, you know, any of those things. So it's a place to find the edges, be met at the edges and grow. It's amazing how I remember one group where there was one probably 40-something gay guy, and sometimes there are more, sometimes there are less, and there must have been 7 or 8 everyone else was identifying as straight, and they were anywhere between, I think in that group it was 20s and maybe early 50s, and he was talking about his relationship issues, and all the other guys, this is only a one-off, all the other guys were giving him pickup tips. How cool is that? So it's very much the same side, and there are, say, retired working class older men and young aristocracy. It's such a cross section, and from the first round people get on the same side and it's like, there's space for me here, there's space to grow, there's space to explore. We laugh so much. And I'm astounded at the things that people say in the groups, the depth they go to, the courage they have to tell the most embarrassing things, the things that generally they know that they'd be judged for in the outside world, but rather out, and it doesn't own them anymore, then kept separate and kept as their secret, and they're disconnected.
Is there, I've just got a couple more questions before we complete. Is there some disconnect that you observe then between the narrative of the mainstream or the pressures in society and culture that's still quite pervasive and the type of awareness and masculinity that you're encouraging in your groups?
I'm really quite shocked and amazed at how the mainstream's changing. And I don't know whether it's the media or me living in London. It might be different in a small town somewhere. But the fluidity of masculinity and sexuality, authenticity, transparent sharing, it's a lot more mainstream. And people can talk about their sexual exploits and their fears. They can talk about how they hide their money in case people want it, because they're taught to hide their money and they don't want to be liked for money. And people can also talk about how they don't have money and how they're scared of money. And money is generally one of the taboo subjects. You know, there's the money thing, there's the sex and sexuality thing, there's even like performance, and it could be sexual performance, it could be work performance, it could be very often, how do I relate to my parents and my children and my wife and my siblings, and how do I have space for me and spread who and how I am into the family. So it's very intimate in that way. And for me, I know that the world that I can change is within myself, within my communities, and they spread it in the way that I live. As I spread it in the way that I live, things are changing. And I guess I have cut myself away from the media. I don't believe a lot of what goes on. Plus, I find it very upsetting. I find it very limiting. And I find it a lot easier and, I guess, more joyous to live in my bubble and to spread who I am and how I am within that bubble, and for things to change. Luckily, I get in the media quite a lot these days, and quite mainstream media. So I get to be me and share that, rather than reacting to or feeling like I should be like whatever it is that's going on out there. But men are changing. And for me, being an authentic man, by no means being muscly or sharp-tongued or powerful in any of the traditional ways. It's being authentic enough that I can be a boy, I can be as feminine as I want, I can be as masculine as I want, I can be authentic, and that can change. So I don't know if that's actually answered your questions or whether I've gone off on one. I guess I'm trying to cover up that I don't really know what goes on out there too much, and I'm not that bothered either. I'd rather change it from the inside.
I think if I heard you, I would summarise it by saying what you've made very clear is change starts from within. And you've made those changes yourself, and you're holding the space for others to make those changes, and it's that inner change that then is reflected in everything and everyone around you.
Yeah.
And so you've gotten to a place where now people come to you as the expert on that, because you've taken that inner journey.
And it's a strange role to take, because very often in groups and even out of groups, the role that's put on me is the big brother, the best friend, the father, that type of, I guess, an authority figure that I didn't want to take. But now I know, and especially in an open group, the men will look at me when they speak, and it took me a while to accept that, because it felt like a failure, that, you know, I don't want to be a leader, I want to be one off. Until I realized that if a man looks at another man in the eye, generally, apparently, it either means I want to fight you, or I want to fuck you. So with that kind of oomph, well, to look at the person who's facilitating, I guess it's safe, and then it opens up. So I'm happy to take that role for a short while, and then to hand it back as a man becomes whoever he is, and he embodies his own power. There are a few things that men don't talk about in groups that would be very dangerous and very dodgy to talk about in groups. There are things that need to happen privately, and it's the individual's boundaries. But God, some of the things that we sit with.
I'd love to keep talking, but we need to draw the interview to a close. And I guess that I do this often at the end. I'd love to ask if you have a parting message for our viewers, particularly, you know, with all your wisdom and experience from the perspective, you know, a message for men, actually. That's what I'd like to hear.
I'll tell you what crossed my mind straight away. And I guess when you said for men, have the balls to be the love and share the love.
Can you say that to the camera, please?
I have to say balls to the camera now. It's the courage. Have the courage, irrespective of fears or judgments, to be the love and share the love. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Kenny.
Thank you.
I've been so taken on this journey with you, really touched by your personal story, which I didn't know, and just amazed at the transformation that is sitting before me and the presence that you now embody. It's beautiful. It's been a beautiful encounter. Thank you so much, and thank you for the work that you do as a woman and just as a being, as a fellow being. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for watching and being with us. And join me again next time on Heart to Heart with me, Shakti Sundari.